Hello everyone and welcome to another really wild game from the St. Louis Rapid and Blitz, the Rapid event. It's Lenier, Dominguez versus Magnus, Carlsen. And before we check out the game, yes, I did receive a copyright claim for my previous video, the Nepo versus Shion game, where I showed the 10-second clip of Bf4 Robin by Monty Python, but I'm sure you'll agree it was... it was definitely worth it. Just wanted to mention that because the video, due to that, is not available in some countries. So if you're not able to watch my previous video, sorry about that. But yeah, getting back to this one, Magnus really needs to go back, get back into the tournament because he lost that game to Nepo on day one due to a disconnect. And now let's see how he does against Dominguez here. He has the black pieces and Dominguez is white and opens with e4. So Magnus goes for e5. We have knight to f3 and Magnus goes for d6. He goes for Philidor's defense, and here we have d4, of course. This is the main move. We have e captures on d4, of course not bishop to g4. You only play bishop to g4 if you want to check if your opponent is a Morphy fan. So e captures on d4, knight captures and knight to f6 now. Attacking the pawn, so white develops while defends, knight c3 and bishop to e7 and bishop to f4. Not the absolute main move, but it is played when white wants to make haste and castle queenside as soon as possible. So Magnus castles kingside and Dominguez goes queen to d2, prepares to castle queenside, c6 by Magnus, and now castles queenside. And of course, now that we have castles on opposite sides of the board, it is of course natural that one player attacks on the queenside and one on the kingside, and it's usually a race, so Magnus starts immediately with b5. We have f3, strengthening the e4 pawn, so if you kick away the knight, you don't have to worry about losing the e4 pawn, but b4 just the same. And now you can choose knight e2, knight b1, or knight to a4. All three have their merits, but knight to b1 is what the Dominguez goes for. And now a5. Magnus, of course, wants to bust open the position on the queen side as soon as possible, whereas Dominguez wants to do the same on the king side. So g4, h4 is coming, and he also wants to push on the king side. We have a4 by Magnus, and now there are games where knight to f5 was played, and also a3 is a known move in this position. However, h4 by Dominguez is a new move, so already as of move 12 we have a completely new game. We have c5 by Magnus, now grabbing more space on the queen side, knight to f5, and now eliminating the knight from f5. You could just leave it there, but it is an extremely strong piece, so Magnus decides to get rid of it, even though it means, opening the g file. So g captures and knight to c6. The knight can now also come into the game. You can go knight e5, you can play c4, b3, and so on. So h5, Dominguez continues his attack on the king side, and now knight to d4. And this is now a monster knight. It's very hard to get rid of it. You have to play something like c3, which will open up your king's position. But this is kind of what you have to do at some point. And here, it's most probably the most important moment in the game, whether you play or whether not to play a h6, because it's really a crazy race, but it's I think for a rapid game it's a very hard decision, because if you play h6 and you meet h6 with a3, then if we go into a race, captures with check, king captures, and now rook e8. Yes, white also opened up the black king, but it is black who's attacking here. For example, after you go queen h2, with ideas of maybe eliminating the knight and then playing queen captures on h7, it's also black who will be attacking queen a5, now going after the a2 pawn, and there's no good way to defend this. If bishop c4, just b3. You force the bishop to capture, and then you eliminate the bishop. Captures, and now after the bishop is captured and it's traded for the knight, now you finally get queen captures on a2. And after king c3, black can trade queens. However, black can also continue the attack with queen a5 with check, and then it's hard to say who would come up on top here, but black's moves are a lot more natural, and for a rapid game I don't think this is a good idea to go for white. So Dominguez holds off with the h6 idea. He first improves the position with queen g2. Now he has a very nice queen here, then h6 will be very strong. So king to h8 by Magnus. He says, okay, now if you go h6, I can play g5, and now whether captures or captures, I do have king g8, and you're not checkmating me here. But maybe maybe h6 was the way to go, because here Dominguez played bishop to e3 back, and now Magnus says, okay, you didn't play h6, you're not gonna play h6. So here Magnus plays h6 himself. Bishop to d3, Dominguez continues developing, and now knight to d7. And here Magnus frees up the f6 square for his bishop, as this bishop pawn battery will be an incredible defensive resource, as you'll see later on. So rook h to g1, Dominguez threatens checkmate here, and now bishop to f6 defending. We have f4 with ideas of e5, as you really want to get rid of that bishop here. So rook to e8, and now comes bishop captures on d4. Not wanting to wait for the knight to get into the game, and also to meet this c4 move. So here Dominguez eliminates it, captures, and now knight to d2. We have knight to c5 by Magnus, again putting pressure on the bishop. Also you are ready to push those pawns on the queen side. And now knight to c4, putting more pressure here, really preparing to push this pawn to e5. But Magnus says, no problem, just b3. And it's not good however you capture it. For example, if a captures, you just open up the rook here, and it's a really bad position for white. So instead, after this b3 move, we have king to b1. Now just not allowing any quick moves with the rook. So here b captures on c2 check, bishop captures, and now rook to b8, aligning the rook on the same file. Here if the knight moves a3 will be a possibility. So here we have bishop to d3. e5, although it looks like a really great move, is easily met with rook captures on e5. And of course you still keep this bishop here. And after knight captures, bishop captures, it doesn't matter that you have two rooks, a queen, and the bishop, because this bishop, okay, let's use maybe blue, this bishop and g7 pawn, white will not be able to break through this even with two rooks, queen, and a bishop. Because the rooks are useless here, the queen also, and the bishop is a light square bishop, and this is on a dark square. So this is actually a great defensive resource for Magnus. So after this rook to b8 move, we have bishop back to d3, and now here Magnus goes for rook to b4. This is maybe a bit too slow. Maybe bringing the queen into the game, queen e7, queen to c7 are some of the engine stop choices. Although this is playing something like this in a rapid game is always hard to come by. So Magnus goes for the more human rook to b4, which comes with the obvious threat of just knight captures. Here bishop captures and you lose the knight. So it's a very nice rook there. Also you could double up here, maybe queen b8. However, Dominguez meets this with a3. He kicks away the rook, rook b3, and now bishop back to c2. Magnus goes back, and now Dominguez goes e5. So it's not much different. Magnus will still give up the exchange because it's the only thing he can do. So d captures, f captures on e5, and now rook captures on e5. We have captures, and now again bishop to d3. So it's hard for Magnus to make any progress here, but it's also very hard for Dominguez to make any progress because you're just not coming through. This bishop pawn combo is just brilliant. So here bishop back to f6 by Magnus, and now queen to c2, putting pressure on the knight here. So queen to a5, Magnus just nicely defends it. We have rook to g2. Once the queen moves, the rook will also help out with the defense of the b2 pawn. And here Magnus decides to give up this knight for bishop. So captures, and now queen to d5. A very nice centralizing move by the queen, also attacking the rook on g2, so you have to do something about it. And here Dominguez plays rook to e2. And the thing about rook to e2 is that it completely blunders the game. But I'm not going to tell you why, because it'll spoil the fun. So I'm first going to show you what Magnus played here. Here Magnus improved the position with king to h7. To remove any back rank weaknesses, but now Dominguez played queen to e4, but the game is still completely lost for Dominguez due to the same reason as it was before, but I'm going to show it after we check out the game. But now feel free to pause the video here and win the game for Magnus while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting this and this. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, yes, of course, it's rook captures on b2. And now the point is, if rook captures, then the queen is no longer defended. So Magnus just wins the queen. So there's only one move. Of course, you're not going to play something like this to get checkmated. So there's only one move. King captures on b2. And now comes d3 with check, opening up this dragon's diagonal. I mean, this bishop has been such a beautiful defensive resource, and now it becomes the strongest attacking piece for Magnus here, which is simply incredible. And here you have to move the king. Whether you go king c1, king b1, doesn't really matter. We can show if king b1, then queen b3 check, king to c1, and now you get this queen to c3 check. And now it's just game over. King b1, and now queen to a1 is checkmate because the pawn covers the c2 square. So instead, we have king to c1 by Dominguez, and now queen to c5 check. Now, it looks really wild because, again, king d2, king b1 is a possibility. But again, if king to b1, then queen b5 check, king back to c1, and now d captures on e2. The pawn is protected, and you don't really have anything with white anymore. Rook d2, you're going to go queen c5 check, king b1, and now finally queen g1 check, and the queen now also defends the queening square. You're going to move the king, and now another queen is brought into the game. So instead, after queen to c5, we have king to d2, but now, of course, comes queen to c2 with check. We have king to e1 by Dominguez, opening up an attack towards Carlsen's queen. And here, there's only one move that wins the game for Magnus, and of course, you'll see it as it's the only move. Bishop to h4 with check. And now the point is, if the queen captures, you no longer have a defense against queen captures on e2 with checkmate. And if you move the king, let's say king to f1 or something, then comes queen captures on d1 with check. Rook can block, hoping to go into some sort of a king and pawn endgame, but it's all in vain. You can just trade into a king and pawn endgame, and here g6 wins the game. The king and pawn endgame is, of course, winning for black. Black is up 2 pawns. It's not even close. But for those of you who don't believe me, captures, 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 and after king d2, just king g5, captures h5, or pretty much whatever, and now the pass pawn and the extra pawn is very fast and winning. So after this bishop to h4 check move, Dominguez resigned, and what a victory for Magnus Carlsen. So what I wanted to show you in that position is pretty much the same, because here after bishop d3 we had this rook b4, and after a few more moves, sorry, I rewind a bit too much. Carlsen played queen to d5 check, and Dominguez played rook to e2, and now the same idea applies, only first you have to kick the queen away. Carlsen played a waiting move, and then Dominguez allowed this combo, but Carlsen could have forced it with rook to b3, because the queen now has to move, and after any move you still can go into this line, captures, captures, and check, and everything repeats itself. But Carlsen made a preparating move, and then Dominguez allowed him to execute this. But it's even nicer with rook captures on b2 rather than forcing the queen to move and then capturing. I guess both is nice. Like, I don't know, depends on how you prefer your chess lines to begin. But yeah, that's the game, round 5 of the St. Louis Rapid. I do hope you enjoyed it, and we're going to show the standings, and the standings are very interesting because, like I said, Magnus lost the game to Nepo due to a disconnect in the first day, but he still emerged on top after day 2 because he defeated all 3 of his opponents. He defeated Dominguez here, he defeated Levon Aryan, and he defeated Pentala Harikrishna in round 6, so he just obliterated everyone on day 2. And he's again leading the tournament. Second place, Yanni Pomnishi, who lost that game to Shiong, the previous one we've shown. I'm sorry if some of you can't see it, but I mean, what are you gonna do? Then Wesley So also with 8, Levon Aryan with 7, Pentala Harikrishna with 6. With 5 points, we have Hikaru Nakamura, Alexander Grishuk, and Jeffrey Shiong. Lenier Dominguez in 9th place, and in 10th place again Alireza Firouzja, who can't seem to budge from last place in both tournaments, but you know, the tournament is still young, anything can happen. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Michael Bartlett, Musa Alphabet, Juan Pablo Barrera, Aidan Bielski, and Bala Subramaniam Mariapan for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the St. Louis events, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.